This whole society is too driven by money. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with money. I'd like to have a bigger piece of it myself. Take care of my wife, support her in the lifestyle to which I'd like her to become accustomed to. I'd like to be comfortable, and so would you. We'd all like to be reasonably secure in our home. I'd like to have a home, a little bit of security, and live our lives and not be hassled by it, instead of being harvested continuously by the money junkies here. By the way, interesting result. We're seeing the sociological backlash from all of this Wall Street fraud and the money junkie behavior. There was this article we put up at whatreallyhappened.com earlier today saying that bling is now out as a measure of your social status. And intellectualism is in, because bling can signify criminality, and it's simply something that you bought and decorated yourself with, but intellectualism is something you had to work for and acquire and attain on your own. So, hallelujah, I'm back in fashion again. And I think it's about high time, because our society is so driven by this money process and extracting money from people, we ignore the qualities in each other that we really should be valuing, those things that cannot be purchased in a bottle and poured all over our head, like intelligence, loyalty, compassion, love. We need to reappreciate those things. I keep telling my wife Claire that I fell in love for her for the things that are inside her heart and inside her head. And I don't see things like gray hair or wrinkles. You know, I see her as this woman I fell in love with all those years ago, and I'm never going to see her other than that. Because I fell in love with her for what she is, not what she looked like, not what she dressed like, not her bling. I didn't fall in love with her for her bling. I fell in love with her for those things that improve with time. And if you can learn to do that, if you can put down all these expectations that mass media advertising give you, you will find yourself much happier in your relationships. Many years ago, I wrote an article about it called The Dimple Wash Mentality. And it came out of my experience producing TV commercials, where I have a new product called Dimple Wash. And in order to sell it, I get a really cute girl from a casting call of thousands and a really handsome, studly guy from a casting call of thousands. And I shoot a commercial where the girl is unhappy and lonely and she's not getting any. And the friend says, "Oh, you must try new Dimple Wash and clean up that complexion of yours." And so the girl pours the stuff all over her face. And at the end of the commercial, she's being helped out of a nice Bugatti Veyron by the handsome, studly guy. And they're going into a very expensive club on Sunset Strip. And that's the commercial. And you show that commercial out in America, and then your average, everyday, nothing wrong with her, just out of high school girl working at the counter in J.C. Penney's in Kansas buys the stuff and pours it all over her and starts saying, "Well, I'm waiting for my handsome, studly guy in the Bugatti to pick me up for the date." So when Mr. Average American in an old pickup truck comes by and asks her out, he's already got a strike against him, because he's not up to the level of expectation the girl has been convinced she now deserves because she's pouring this product all over her. I used to really anger clerks at stores. I'd go in to get some men's cologne or something like that, and they'd say, "What do you want, sir?" And I'd say, "I want the one I saw on TV when I pour it all over me and this blonde with really huge bazooms magically appears next to me." And they really did not appreciate my sense of humor. But that really is how a lot of our advertising is sold. You will get the really beautiful person to stand next to you and love you if you will buy whatever it is they're selling. Remember the Spuds McKenzie campaign for the beer commercials? The message of that is, you can be a dog, but if you're drinking our beer, the hot babes are going to hang around you. They aren't, but that was the message of the commercial. And so you'll have people who will buy the beer or the bling or the deodorant spray that they whatever. And some of the commercials are tongue-in-cheek, like the Axe ones, but that's the message. Use our product, you will get the really hot babe or the really hot guy. And so they buy the product, and they're expecting the really hot babe and the really hot guy. And when the average kind of person, who's perfectly good human being, shows up, not interested. Not interested. And I think it's one of the reasons why we have so much problems with long-term relationships in this country. We are brainwashed and conditioned to judge people almost entirely by the outside, which I guess is why we have so many absolute bastards as politicians doing so well in this country. We look at that very nicely tailored suit and say, oh, that must be a good person. You know, just like all those poor suckers who look at that guy holding the collection plate in that really fancy robe and say, oh, he must be an honorable person because he's got jewelry in the shape of crosses all over him. So, hey, no problem. I'll follow him up into the choir loft after the service. Instant wearable respectability, like Obama and his Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't really deserve it. Most of the people who got it didn't really deserve it. Al Gore for global warming, Henry Kissinger, Shimon Peres. It's a decoration given by the power elite to people to make them seem more respectable, and so the general population of suckers will believe them. And you got to stop falling for that kind of stuff. You got to learn to see people for who and what they are without the decorations. We'll be back after these commercials. Let's see. Now, Rick Perry, trying to prove that he can out-Nazi everybody else who's running in the GOP field this election season, wants to revamp the political structure, basically saying that he wants a military free of civilian control, not being micromanaged by civilians, where the military commanders are truly in charge. Kind of like Nazi Germany. We know how well that worked out for them. Now, internationally, over the weekend, we started seeing more protests in Egypt, in Tahrir Square. It's breaking out all over again for a reason that I told you it was going to a while back. The new government of Egypt has decided they can act like the old government of Egypt, and everybody would go along with it, and that, of course, is not going to happen. History is against it. We talk about the French Revolution as if it's a singular, but it wasn't. It was several revolutions rapidly in a row, because each new batch of revolutionaries that would come in would say, all right, it's our turn there at the royal trough, and we're going to start being just as greedy as the money junkies we replaced. A lot of the people who led the first revolution in France wound up being condemned to death by later revolutions for that simple mistake. If you are going to lead a popular revolution, you'd better remember that you're there to serve the people. If you get into the halls of power and say, well, my turn, I get to act like the government we just kicked out, well, then you're going to get kicked out. It doesn't work that way. If you're not there in the revolution to really make life better for your fellow countrymen, you might as well quit now, because you're going to come to a sticky end. If you're just there to take advantage of the turmoil and try and make yourself a pile of cash, quit now, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to work out. These things have a tendency over time to evolve to a new government that serves the people. And for the 100 years after the French revolutions, ignoring that idiot Napoleon, France had a government that was a little more concerned about the people. All right, so anyway, over in Egypt, they're having protests. The Egyptian cabinet resigned earlier today. They're basically saying, we can't handle this. So now the new cabinet has resigned. The military say, we're in charge, and the people are saying, no, you aren't, and it's going to get ugly again. And no doubt, the U.S. and Israel are trying to say, okay, good, we got him back in turmoil again. How can we take this back to what we had with Mubarak? There's this constant ongoing contest between the people of a nation wanting to govern themselves and outsiders saying, we'll give you a government to run you for our behalf. Iran, again, textbook example. U.S. goes in 1953, overthrows Mohammad Mossadegh, imposes the Shah. The Shah basically gives away Iran's oil and impoverishes people until 1979, when there's a revolution to kick him out. And after the revolution, they kick out the American puppet. All of a sudden, we see the United States saying, oh, Iran, they're bad, evil people. You don't want to even talk to them. And we're going to invade and overthrow and put another Shah back on the throne. That's basically what they're trying to do over there. So here in Egypt, we had Mubarak, who was really good friends with Israel and the United States, and not very good for his people. And the people stood up and kicked him out. And now we've got these people, Israel and the U.S. coming back in to tinker with the thing and say, let's try and get it back to the way it used to be, where Israel got all of Egypt's oil and gas at bargain basement rates, and it doesn't matter if the Egyptian people don't have money for their schools and stuff, because they don't count anymore here. But it's getting violent over there, and the Egyptian military are excusing themselves, saying, hey, we're not doing anything to the Egyptian protesters that the American police aren't doing to the students at Occupy America. So, hey, once again, America leads the world, this time in methods of political repression. Meanwhile, over in Israel, Defense Minister Ehud Barak is basically saying the time has come for the world to move against Iran. Why does Israel, every time they see somebody as a problem, they want the rest of the world to go deal with it for them? We don't work for you, Israel. We don't even like you. If Ehud Barak really thinks Iran is a problem, then give him a rifle, give him a parachute, fly him over Iran, kick him out, and call Ahmadinejad and say, Barak is on his way to kick your butt all by himself. But I'm getting fed up with Israel running around the world saying, you got to go kill our enemies for us. They did it in Canada now. Apparently the Canadians are deploying warships off the coast of Israel and Jordan and Lebanon now to make sure that, everything's hunky-dory for Israel. And I understand why that's going on. I've been warning the Canadians for quite some time. The U.S. is edging close to collapse. We have been parasitized so much by Israel. Our economy's a mess, our society's a mess, our infrastructure has crumbled while American tax dollars go to build infrastructure in Israel. So the U.S. is just this empty, drained-out husk with teeth marks in its neck. And we're about ready to collapse, and so the parasites are leaping across the border onto Canada and saying, you will give us money, and you will fight our wars for us, and you will send your weapons over to kill the people that we say. And unfortunately, the Canadian government has proved just as pliant and willing as that of the United States of America. Meanwhile, down here in the United States, the U.S. is unveiling new sanctions on Iran, saying, we will not allow you to trade in dollars. And Iran said, good, fine, we're better off without them, which is what Gaddafi said, which is why they invaded and killed him. So basically, seriously, the United States is, they're unveiling all these sanctions against Iran because of the laptop of death. Targeting the financial, oil, and petrochemical sectors. They're refusing to allow any commerce with Iran's state bank, and it's exactly what the bankers were doing against Nazi Germany in 1933. You've seen the newspaper with the headlines on there, Judea declares war against Germany, bankers of the world unite, blah, 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 blah. There are some amazing quotations from Winston Churchill where he just admits flat out the reason the world went to war against Germany is Germany kicked out the private central bank, and they were becoming an economic powerhouse because they weren't being leeched on by a private central bank, and that made them a threat to the rest of the world. Because if you have a whole bunch of countries and one of them doesn't have a private central bank holding it down, that one country can very quickly become the economic leader of the world. But rather than get rid of the private central banks, in Churchill's case the Bank of England, no, let's go off and kill the people who are doing it better than we are doing, so that we're all equal again under the enslavement of private central banks. I'm getting emails from people with some of these quotes I mentioned earlier in the show about Winston Churchill, looking back on World War II and that whole situation. And one that I got here in the email is, Germany's unforgivable crime before World War II was its attempt to loosen its economy out of the world trade system and to build up an independent exchange system from which the world finance couldn't profit anymore. We butchered the wrong pig. Winston Churchill. The Second World War apparently was a book published in 1960. Let's see. Let's look at a few more of these things. And I want to bring these up here because we're always told that wars are about freeing the black man and bringing democracy to whatever. And it isn't. It's all about the money. It's trading the blood of our young people for the bankers' gold. Let's see. Another Winston Churchill quote. We will force this war upon Hitler if he wants it or not. This was a 1936 radio broadcast. Germany becomes too powerful. We have to crush it. Winston Churchill, November 1936, speaking to U.S. General Robert E. Wood. See, this war is an English war, and its goal is the destruction of Germany. Winston Churchill, autumn of 1939 radio broadcast. Let's see, here's a good one. The war wasn't only about abolishing fascism, but to conquer sales markets. We could have, if we'd intended to, prevented this war from breaking out without firing a single shot. But we didn't want to. Winston Churchill to Harry Truman, 1946. Let's see. Here's a good one. We made a monster, a devil out of Hitler. Therefore, we couldn't disavow it after the war. After all, we mobilized the masses against the devil himself, so we were forced to play our part in this diabolical scenario after the war. In no way could we have pointed to our people that the war only was an excuse for an economic preventive measure. U.S. Foreign Minister James Baker. Okay, that was not Truman. And that's exactly the same thing. They're trying to basically paint Ahmadinejad as a devil. He wanted to wipe Israel off the map. And he never actually said that. But as Senator Hiram Johnson said, truth is the first casualty of war. They're going to lie you into another war. And if you were there in New York for my little presentation, or you've seen it on YouTube, that's the way it's always done. It's not shocking and unusual that 9/11 was staged to trigger a war. It's the business as usual. It's the way it's always done. So, now, tomorrow, as you're probably already aware, is the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. 5 months after he signed Executive Order 1111